So I changed the name a little bit. I just didn't want to like shit on frameworks or like they're not bad. They have their plus points and they have their advantages. Before we begin, a little like introduction to me and what I do. So I've been writing Clojure for most of my life. Uh, it's like I think that's a rare occurrence, but I'm lucky enough to do that. Uh, I led backend teams at HelpShift where I worked for more than 13 years. I also helped organize InClojure, which is India's Clojure conference. And now I build AI for enterprises at Unravel Tech. So anybody who has worked in Clojure, their immediate next goal is to find more work that is in Clojure. I think we can all agree, right? And you do everything in your power to make that happen. I was in a fortunate situation where we had the reverse problem of hiring Clojure engineers. And back in the day, as much as I love Clojure, there were a bunch of onboarding problems. Learning Clojure itself was painful because you had people who were like excellent engineers, but they didn't know Clojure. And there wasn't enough material on the internet to teach, so we fixed that problem. We had Clojure onboarding, which took 6 months at one point. We took it down to 1 month. So that was one problem. Then editor options were not that much, so it was just learning Emacs, which is another level of difficulty, and then starting a new project. It just becomes painful and painful, right? So before I complain too much, I just wanted to give my metric for understanding Clojure onboarding. It is reducing TTR. I know acronyms are a big thing in like enterprise software and everything, so just let me expand on this. It is just reducing time to REPL, right? That's your main goal. That's when everyone has a aha moment and they say, okay, Clojure is awesome. But to get there, it takes time. And we have gone a long way as HelpShift also, and as a community also. There is tons of material to learn Clojure now. There are so many options in editors, right? You don't have to learn Emacs now. You can use Calva, and that's also a great option. But still, starting a new project is not that great. It's still a problem. And I would say that this is bias for people who already know Clojure, that it's so easy, just pick up these things and go, right? But it's a bias for people who already know. It's curse of knowledge. And speaking of curses, there are so many blessings. The author of Lisp curse has written that, okay, Clojure is the only community that has kind of broken it successfully. There are some blessings here, stable core, of course, JVM. Amazing community, give it up for you. And last but not the least, libraries over frameworks. I think this is something that everyone kind of knows about it. People talk about it on different channels that you should prefer libraries over frameworks, and everyone knows the importance of it. It just gives you more options. It gives you like, you're not locked into one way of thinking or one way of building. This is like a reference I could find about why like choosing libraries over frameworks is a good idea. But there's a problem also. There's a nice blog post called Clojure Needs a Rails, right? This is exactly kind of pointing to the problem of, okay, how do I start creating a new Clojure project? I know, okay, I have an editor setup, I know Clojure core, I know the basics, but how do I start a project? And this still is a problem because there's no central framework for Clojure. But there are amazing libraries that all of them are like doing one thing and one thing really well. And they play well with each other also. So that's great. We have a great language. We have a great ecosystem. But we have a kickstart problem because it's just where we are right now. But you guys must be wondering, like, okay, the whole theme was LLMs. Where are LLMs, right? So I'll just jump back to 2023. I was in my sabbatical, and I discovered this very nefarious term called vibe coding. And I don't know about like what it means, but it just helped me get started really well. There are so many meanings to it, I'm not going to define it. There's another cool term called code maxing. But main thing is that LLMs can be used to kind of create things. I did this series of screencasts where I built r/place, but in a 3D world, backed by Clojure. I am a very shitty UI engineer, so I didn't know how to make like 3JS and all of that. So the UI that you're seeing is generated by LLMs, right? And 3JS is a singular library, it's not a framework. So that kind of tells you there's a story that's unfolding here. For people who have used LLM, which is, I think, everyone now at this point, is you kind of give some context to your LLM and give some base requirement that this is what I want to get done, and this is the context that you are working with. One way of thinking about it is you just give a context of the library and you say, okay, work with this library. This works very well with 3JS. There are so many examples. I think there was a multiplayer game that became really famous because it was built on 3JS, and just creating anything with LLMs becomes easier. There is another Clojure company called InstantDB. They also are, they're kind of like a Firebase's with real time and everything included, battery included, version 2. So they are kind of helping the dev experience by creating a llms.txt for their whole product. And they're saying, okay, if you use this, you can build things pretty quickly. So can we have llms.txt for Clojure ecosystem is the question we should ask. So how does it look? So you are saying, I have a bunch of libraries that I'm going to feed into LLM, and I'm going to say, use these libraries to make a project. So we are going to solve for the kickstart problem. We all know like these are the libraries that we would choose, people who have created Clojure projects. These are like some of the choices that you will come up with. Instead of that, can we say that these are some of the options of a category of libraries like a web server, routing, or templating? And if you think about it, everyone who has built like a web stack knows that you need a bunch of categories to all to make sense. Like you need templating engine, you need routing. If you're making something for like actual product users, you need authentication, right? So there are categories of libraries that you need. All of them together, you can pass on to LLM and code is generated, voila. So this is the concept number one I want to introduce is blueprints. So instead of, these kind of look like templates, but they are like templates with placeholders. You're saying these are the category of things you need for a project to happen, and these categories can, inside each category, the libraries can be interchangeable. So just changing llms.txt to llms.edn because we like Eden. And this is my proposal of one way of fixing the onboarding problem. Ek is a command line tool. It means one in Sanskrit and Hindi. It also means unity, so unifying everything in Clojure ecosystem under one thing. It rhymes with make and rake, which is a nice thing. And one more interesting bit that Vedant told me was a longer version of Ek is called Ekam, which is exactly reverse of make. This is just a cool coincidence. So what does Ek do and what does it look like? So you just go and say Ek create Acme Web is your project name, and you give it a text prompt. Right now it's a very simple text prompt because I don't want to experiment right now during a demo. And it's saying, okay, it looks like you want a blueprint which is simple app. The blueprint looks like you need a server, you need routing, and you need templating. Right? This is a very oversimplified example of a web server. If you want to have a production grade thing, you will have something like buddy or like some auth, web/auth. And then it has resolved saying that in each category, there are a bunch of libraries that I'm going to use, and I'm going to create a project for you. So this is way of saying that, okay, I am not going to rely on a framework to combine these libraries. I am going to rely on everyone kind of declaring their llms.edn and merging them into a blueprint and let that blueprint work. Now, why this is different than a template is you can say, okay, I have a blueprint, but can I choose a different routing than Reddit? Can I use Composure? And you can do that with Ake. You can say, okay, replace Reddit with Composure because I have that preference. Or let's say my company is using Composure and I am getting onboarded on this whole stack. I want to try it out. I don't care about Reddit, so I can just switch that because that's one of the valid options under routing. So here I'm going to do something very risky that a lot of people have told me not to do it. Just rely on the recording, but let's go for it. We all know what we are going to do is just do a live demo of how Ake looks like. Is this font visible back in the back row? Okay. All right, fingers crossed. So just like in the slides, it selected a blueprint. It said this is what the blueprint looks like, and these are the dependencies I'm going to pull. You can conditionally change the blueprint or the dependencies that are pulled. I'm just going to say no. This whole CLI is written in Babashka, including the AI agent. So that was pretty cool. All right, so it has like created a bunch of files, and what Vedant talked about, like tool calling, this is what we are doing. We are giving a bunch of context to the AI agent, and we are saying that, okay, I have a bunch of tools which are just listing files, creating files, editing files. You have this at your disposal, and you just go ahead and create the project. If you look at the depths.edn, it has included all the dependencies that it said during the execution that I'm going to do that. But moment of truth is this guy, not just the agent running. Oh. And this did not work. Let me show you the other alternative to this, so maybe the next time it works. This is very experimental, as you can see, but the experience that I want to show you is this one, where you can say that, okay, for each category of library, you have more options. I'm just going to go with the default, but I'm going to choose Composure for routing and go with the default for rest of them. All right. Let's check depths.edn. It has picked up Composure instead of Reddit. Let's look at the README. Whew. Okay, so it's just a working server and nothing else. But this itself takes a lot of time for a new Clojure engineer. So this is a lot of hurdles crossed. Again, this is not for your production grade software. Don't use Ake to like create your next company. But it's a good onboarding tool. All right, so what's next for Ake is how do we kind of, so currently the data that you saw was highly curated by me, and it was just to show an example. But you can imagine like the blueprints and the libraries that were like kind of being shown, being powered by a database. For example, how does it know how to pick ring? Will be powered by a SQLite database. Also, it will have the list of blueprints that it supports. From community, what I propose is every library declare its llms.edn file. These are just ways of telling Ake that what category this library lies in, and also what are its documentation sources, what are its example sources. Why are examples important is that is where we'll derive the blueprints also from, and then we'll curate it by different leaders. This is what the blueprint looks like in the code right now, but you can imagine the whole cond as a semantic search. Right now it's just doing like matches over string, but if you push all of this data in a SQLite database with more description, you can potentially run a semantic search on it and return the specific blueprint that you want. This is what it would look like, where you have the Ake Clojure libraries DB. It is making the query to it, and the DB is saying, okay, this is the blueprint that I've matched. These are the libraries that I should be using for this particular query. How is the database being filled? It is being filled by community putting llms.edn in their project, and also we are consuming example projects. So this is like a data pipeline which will feed in the SQLite table. Similar effort is done by a project called Dewey, which is doing it for just indexing the whole Clojure ecosystem. Currently, there is just an online mode, but eventually we want a mode which just works offline and works on local LLMs, because we don't want to pay for Claude tokens all the time. Okay, so next steps are kind of agreeing on llms.edn format, and this is going to be a discussion with the community, building a data pipeline which kind of builds the SQLite database and have like releases for that, and pass on, like right now the agent does not pass every documentation that is out there, but eventually it will be smart enough to pass that context also while building the project. So this is very useful for things that are not indexed by LLM itself. Why it's working so well right now is you have Ring and Composure, which are very famous libraries, but there are libraries which are good but not indexed by the internet. You can still have that accessible and pass it on the LLM so that it can create the right projects. So eventually, this will be Ake's final goal, that starting a new Clojure project becomes like a breeze. By the way, this is a problem for me also, because I have done a lot of Clojure backend engineering, but I don't know how to start a Clojure script project. It takes me a lot of time, and eventually I want to fix that. The next problem is, of course, deploying Clojure. A lot of you will say that, okay, it's just a jar, we push the jar, but for a new engineer, that also becomes a problem, especially if they're young. So that's like a future goal for Ake, is solve it for deployments. And also, even a longer term goal is to solve it for other targets like Clojure Script, Babashka, even Jank. So this brings like a bigger question in the world of LLMs is, are frameworks even necessary, like if you think really long term? And that places Clojure in a very unique and good position of like software development in long term, that, okay, we have like actually got something right, which is paying off in other ways also, where you are letting LLM choose how to compose different libraries and create projects. And this also gives you a lot of freedom because you can pick and choose the libraries. Some of the inspirations for this idea itself was from Luke Vanderhart's talk in Conch, where he talked about how you can like index different identities in the world with LLMs and RDF. There's another nice talk by Daniel Jackson about back to modularity. This also talks about how you can structure your software and projects for LLM world. Ake does not solve all the things discussed here, but it is just solving the onboarding problem. This was the blog post I referred to for writing Ake agent in Babashka. It's a really nice blog post to understand how coding agents are written. Once you know it, it's just a loop recur, making a REST call. That's it. The final point being that LLM world needs a lot more simple software to be written, because LLMs themselves cause a lot of complexity. And I think Clojure, just like Vedang mentioned, Clojure can be like a advantageous position because of the simplicity it brings. And if you think and squint a lot, you can think all of the LLM and AI agent problems as flow engineering. You are just managing state and passing the state to the next execution pipeline. Acknowledgements, Daniel Slutsky and cycloj meetups have been great for this. We have done some ideation on it, and we have gotten good feedback there. Ovi, who's part of the audience here, he's given lots of feedback. Aditya Thale, you might know this fellow. He is writing a lot, and he's like the yin to my yang. He does not use LLMs at all, and he's like thinks deeply about what are frameworks, how are these things combined together, and he's like not pro LLM at all. So it's a good way to balance my thinking. And of course, Vedang, who has come up with the tool name, is really cool. And thank you. Today happens to be my birthday also, so thank you, reClojure, for throwing an amazing birthday party.